You're on track to becoming one of the world's biggest art talents. What do you do? Do you make movies? Do you commission artwork? Or do you paint soup cans? Andy Warhol started documenting his food way before we all were on Instagram, and today we are taking a look at his Campbell soup cans. Without further ado, let's get into it. Warhol's soup cans aren't really difficult to decipher. There's 32 soup cans, painted separately but hung together in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. The soup cans are identical except for their flavors, which correspond to their actual variants. Since 1962, they have been arranged in perfect symmetry, stacked in rows like they would be at a supermarket. There isn't really much to notice here. The paintings are fairly consistent, except for this new flavor, the cheddar cheese soup, which is apparently great as a sauce too. I have to admit, that one looks the most tempting to me. And yes, I zoomed into all the flavors. These cans look uniform and mass-produced, and Warhol took great pains to make sure they look like this. How did he get this uniformity? He started with pencil outlines of the cans, later filling them up flawlessly with paint. In order to understand what the soup cans mean, let's try and understand pop art first. Pop art, or even anti-art, came up in the West in the 50s and blew up by the 60s as a really famous art movement. The pop being short for the popular culture that this art was based on. So, if traditional art was elite and exclusive, pop art was quite the opposite. It was thrifty, mass-produced, cheap, accessible, and easily recognizable. In a nutshell, pop art is the use of popular media and products, the use of bright colors, the use in sculptures, paintings influenced by comics and print media, the use of images of celebrities or fictional characters. The Second World War gave birth to automation, mass production, and consumerism. This meant that after the war, people had more products to buy, more billboards, more celebrities, and way more print advertising. This did not mean that the artists were bashing this culture. They were just acknowledging it. They were trying to blur the lines between high art and low art. This meant that what looked like a cheap imitation of a print ad could now be hung up in some of the finest museums in the world, along with the rest of history's masterpieces. So what's Andy Warhol's personal agenda in painting soup cans? Personally, I don't really think there's any. If the stories are to be believed, Andy Warhol had given up on painting comic strips and urgently needed a new subject to paint. And over dinner, his friend Muriel Lato suggested he paint something you see every day and something everyone would recognize. Something like a can of Campbell's soup. There's other stories where he has told interviewers that he had a diet of canned soup for 20 years straight. That and the fact that his mother would cut flowers out of cans such as those and sell them to earn extra money in the early years of Andy's life.
Yeah. Then somebody can just, it'd be like a store and they just come in and ask you for a can of soup and that was just the easiest way to do something. Because everybody paints the same picture over and over again anyway, so. Oh, well, I used to eat it every day. I still do,
So, was this his devotion to Campbell soup? Was it a tribute to his mother's struggles, or was he just hating on consumerism? Warhol changed the concept of art appreciation. His variations of multiple soup cans, for example, made the process of repetition an appreciated technique. If you take a Campbell soup can and repeat it 1,000,000 times, you're not interested in the soup cans anymore, but how they resemble the repetition of the machine age. He took the most boring subject and painted it from the most boring angle, with no real narrative, all on purpose. And somehow, he claimed it, made it his own, and made it something for the whole world to observe and enjoy. He took cheap canned food and made it high art. I hope you like the decoding of this artwork. If you have any suggestions on what I should do next, drop them below. Cheers.